have a studio in New York, but I live in Virginia in the Appalachian Mountains on a farm, and I do most of my work here, because more and more, when I'm not in the studio, I'm painting outside in nature. And the river, the Appalachian Mountains, and the environment here is my principal source. I start by toning the paper with water media and an emulsion of mica powder, and I let that puddle. It makes a lot of natural stains, and then I fold it, and then I wrinkle it pretty extensively. It gives it a real topographic effect, and it breaks up my brush strokes and any marks I put on the paper, taking away from the predictable thing. I'm painting with clear oil emulsion, a mixture of linseed oil and paint thinner or turpentine. And it lays down clear lines that dry up a bit, but later I'll dust them with graphite and pigment. Here I'm using graphite. Once I've painted with clear oil emulsion, I begin applying dry pigment on the surface, rubbing either hard or light, and then I'll dust it, and the lines will collect the dry pigment, and I'll be able to see what I've done. It's kind of working from invisibility toward an appearing composition. Sometimes it helps to not see what you're doing, because there's so much of what you're doing that proceeds from automatic behaviors you've adapted over the years. And sometimes you want to get a fresh take on those, or have an insight into them that lets you get to something else, a different movement, a different kind of a characteristic in the painting. When I think the painting is finished, I paint it with refined beeswax from a double boiler with a bristle brush, and I shave that off so the oil emulsion and the dry pigment are sealed under a coating of beeswax. And then I stretch the piece of paper over a primed wooden panel, and that completely smooths it out, although all of the folds and wrinkles show as marks, random marks throughout the painting surface, and combined sometimes in very interesting ways with the lines that have been made with the graphite and the pigment, or seem to relate to any composition that you might see or sense, but they're actually completely random. And I like that free associational field that allows you to start anywhere in the painting and then maybe the next time you look at it, start somewhere else. I'm interested in invisibility, but also in making paintings that paint themselves. These are my trays that I use in my watercolor work, my large-scale watercolor work, and I save the trays and I exhibit them. And what you see here on the wall are trays mounted on panel clips that are just the residual of whatever paint I was using, and they have Lexan caps on them. So sometimes it's what you're painting, and sometimes it's your palette. That's important. My earlier work, and this is a painting I'm wrapping here that's from more than 10 years ago. This is the back of it. As you can see, this is panels. These are independent pieces of watercolor paper that have been stretched over panels that have been designed to connect together. When these parts were all painted, they're in different parts of the room. So I didn't really have a clear idea what this would come out looking like. And I developed these polyptics, I call them, this polyptical manner of bringing panels together to make a single painting. I originally developed this when I was working with John Cage, and when I was trying to develop strategies that would let Cage paint and do things differently each time, since he didn't like to repeat himself at all. So that was a great midlife experience for me. We developed paper smoking in the workshop. Again, this was something that we developed large scale for John Cage because he was very interested in using smoked paper in his paintings and in his printmaking at Crown Point Press. You can see impressing the paper with the smoke imagery makes a beautiful pattern and effect. And I must have tried 20 or 30 different ways of doing this. And finally you can almost draw with the smoke. Then this gets stretched. I've done exhibitions to support ceramic artists. Oh, Rob Barnard, one of them, and a group of Virginia artists who work with wood fire kilns. What you see up here is the result of stretching the smoked paper. It makes almost an organic landscape. This one's particularly beautiful. It reminds me kind of a Chinese landscape. So that might be why I have it hanging next to this scroll painting of Han Shan and Shide, the mythic poet of China, who's the poet of Cold Mountain, is Han Shan. I love the lines in that. And the lines in that, in some ways, are something I feel when I'm working with the invisible oil emulsion and putting down color and dry pigment and graphite in it. That's probably why I ended up having those two things hanging side by side. When I paint outdoors, I usually make several pieces. I start with a drawing or a smaller painting before I go into the larger work. Recently, I've been working on these reddish rectangular pieces. They're done in oil emulsion also. I associate them with the opportunity I had in 1973 to meet Ava Gardner in London. She told me she wanted to learn to draw or have a drawing lesson so that she could draw her father looking like Jesus Christ, which impressed me quite a bit. These paintings are something of an homage to Ava because she came from the Piedmont country of North Carolina, which is red clay country. I think of these as portraits of sorts, kind of made of earth and blood.